Celebrating 48 years on the air, award-winning Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, extended coverage on bird flu, beginning with the question to cull or vaccinate. Plus, some milk drinkers are turning to raw milk. The demand is higher, but the FDA says not so fast. In Southern gardening, a celebrated plant with color galore and some interesting health benefits. And in our main feature, an extended version of our story, Hope for Citrus Country. Farm Week starts right now.
Hello everyone, I'm Zach Ashmore.
And I'm Mike Russell. Great to have you with us again here on Farm Week. By now you've heard the country's newest Ag Secretary, Brooke Rollins, has been confirmed and is off and running in her new cabinet position. And much like the president himself, she's wasted very little time in getting down to business. She wasted no time in getting busy. Day one, she addressed 400 USDA staffers, laying out her priorities. She also sent a letter to governors outlining her vision and asking for help. She also began the process of SNAP reform, asking states to participate, and she convened a briefing on bird flu and egg prices. Among other things, she reviewed findings from DOGE to stop wasteful spending. She also held a press conference at the White House, then left for Kentucky to address more than 15,000 at the National Farm Machinery Show. All of that on day one. And speaking of bird flu, the USDA has issued a conditional license to a company to produce a bird flu vaccine for chickens. The vaccine maker is Zoetis, known for making preventative treatments for pets. A spokesman says scientists began updating its existing bird flu vaccine several years ago, and recently the feds gave the company a conditional license. Zoetis previously developed vaccines to protect the California condor. Other countries already vaccinate their birds against the virus, but the U.S., as you'll see, has tried to eradicate avian flu instead. That strategy may be shifting. Workers have culled more than 150 million infected birds since the latest outbreak in 2022.
If you've been to a supermarket in the last few weeks, you've noticed that not only are eggs increasingly expensive, they're also becoming harder and harder to find.
Dr. Jonathan Reiner with George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences says the U.S. has a decision to make.
Whether to vaccinate the flocks in this country and deal with the political repercussions of that from the GOP base, or deal with rising egg prices and maybe eggs coming in from Mexico.
While other countries already vaccinate chickens against bird flu, the U.S. approach has long been focused on eradicating the virus, mainly through culling flocks of birds when a case is identified. Historically, vaccination has been thought to carry a number of complications, including making it difficult to detect the virus in inoculated birds and trade concerns that may result from that. Over the last 30 days, 151 flocks have been confirmed to have avian flu, affecting more than 23 million birds, according to the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, part of the USDA. Dr. Paul Offit says people could also become sick.
And certainly it can infect people who come in close contact with chickens and inhale a lot of the virus into their lower respiratory tract, their lungs.
Zoetis, the manufacturer behind the vaccine, says its scientists began updating its existing avian flu vaccine in 2022. In a statement, Zoetis noted the decision to vaccinate commercial poultry flocks rests solely with the national regulatory authorities in consultation with their local poultry sector. In Atlanta, I'm Ivan Rodriguez.
The high price of eggs, one of the factors driving bird flu vaccinations. The cost of destroying millions of birds, another. In the meantime, the trend of drinking raw milk has grown, and the FDA calls it one of the riskiest foods people can consume, especially as bird flu impacts dairy herds. In New York, reporter Lee Waldman visited a dairy farm to see how raw milk is collected.
With his cows brushed and milking equipment thoroughly cleaned,
we're ready to go.
Stephen Vincent is ready to begin milking his dairy cows at Brookby Farm in upstate New York. These specialized machines collect approximately 300 gallons of milk weekly. It's then cooled and bottled on site. He and his wife Jamie sell it directly to customers in the family farm store.
I just feel like people have gotten to a point where they want to get back to more natural way of living and eating.
In the past few months, they say they've personally seen the demand for raw milk skyrocket.
We have families that come get it in 5-gallon buckets.
As bird flu becomes a growing concern, impacting dairy herds in states including California and Nevada, the Vincents are back to COVID-era protocols. The barn isn't open to visitors. We had to wear protective foot coverings, and the windows were covered to keep birds out.
New York has started testing the milk for that.
Farmers in New York, like the Vincents, are required to have a specialized permit from the Department of Agriculture and Markets in order to sell raw milk to people. It requires the animals and milk to be tested regularly. But the Vincents wish there was a uniformed requirement for selling raw milk instead of varying from state to state.
Here, I have to sell it here on my farm. I cannot take it to a farmer's market to sell. Connecticut is 3 miles away. They can bottle it and sell it in a grocery store.
On the West Coast, Bethany McDaniel buys her raw milk from a larger operation, Raw Farm, which recently had a bird flu outbreak.
That gave me zero pause.
For 2 years, McDaniel has consumed raw milk on and off because she believes it has improved her dairy sensitivity, her children's immune system, and her gut health, though the FDA refutes all of those claims.
With proper standards in place, there's nothing dangerous or risky about it.
That's not the belief held by the majority of the medical community. Dr. Rabia Delator, a gastroenterologist, says prior to the required pasteurization of milk, up to 25% of foodborne illnesses came from it.
People were getting sick from drinking raw milk because the process of actually getting milk from a cow into an actual container for you to drink was fraught with different types of infectious sources.
Milk is pasteurized by applying high heat over a short period of time, which kills bacteria like E. coli, listeria, and staph without removing nutrients found in milk. Delator warns against drinking raw milk and urges anyone interested to research the risks rather than believing what they see on social media.
If you blindly follow instructions that you see on social media or other sources where there's no liability, you could be hurting yourself or your loved ones, and so I wouldn't recommend that.
In New York, I'm Lee Waldman.
On the lighter side, if you'd like it to be, your landscape could be very good to you in more ways than one. Here's Southern Gardening host Dr. Eddie Smith with a delightful little thing called the goji berry.
I am always on the lookout for plants that provide healthy fruits and berries. At Pine Hill Nursery in Pass Christian, they have goji berry plants. Native to Asia and cultivated for centuries for its nutrient-rich fruit and medicinal properties, this sprawling, arching shrub grows 6 to 10 feet tall and wide and thrives in USDA zones 5 through 9. It is both heat and drought tolerant once established, making it a low-maintenance addition to many gardens. The plant features long, flexible branches, sometimes thorny, with soft gray-green, lance-shaped leaves. The fruit, which is the plant's most celebrated feature, is small, oval to oblong, and measures about ½ an inch in length. The berries ripen from green to a vibrant red-orange color, resembling tiny cherry tomatoes. The berry's glossy, thin skin protects the soft, juicy interior. Goji berries have a unique flavor profile that combines sweetness, tartness, and earthy undertones. The plant prefers full sun and well-draining soil with a slightly alkaline to neutral pH, tolerating a range of soil types and conditions. The fruit ripens from late summer to early fall, and harvesting is usually done by hand to prevent bruising the delicate berries. With its attractive growth habit and nutritional fruit, The goji berry plant is an excellent choice for gardeners seeking a productive yet ornamental shrub for their landscape. I'm Eddie Smith, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a break right here, but stick around. Coming up on Farm Week, imagine if 90% of Mississippi's corn and soybean production was wiped out because of a row crop disease. Florida citrus producers have faced this, but now researchers are hoping to turn things around. Using amazing technology, they're precision breeding citrus trees that can still survive and produce fruit. Making lemonade out of lemons. That's still ahead on Farm Week. Don't go away.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith. I believe in my own work and in the opportunity I have to make my life useful to humanity. I believe that education is a lifelong process, and the greatest university is the home. That my success as a teacher is proportional to those qualities of mind and spirit that give me welcome entrance to the homes of the families that I serve. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith. I believed that education, of which extension work is an essential part, is basic in stimulating individual initiative, self-determination, and leadership. I believe that these are the keys to democracy, and that people, when given facts they understand, will act not only in their self-interest, but also in the interest of society. I believe in intellectual freedom to search for and present the truth without bias and with courteous tolerance towards the views of others. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
Time for the market report. The rally continues for row crops.
That's right, Mike, and livestock dropping. We'll look into the details of both. But first, the numbers. What were the week's biggest gains and losses? And then some recent USDA reports telling us what the livestock sector looks like right now. And finally, market analyst Dan Huber gives us his take on the row crop rally. So, markets closed the week still splitting, row crops up, livestock down. Let's take a look. The week's biggest gain, sugar up about 3/4 cent, a near 4% increase from the previous week. The week's biggest loss, lean hogs, down nearly 5 cents, an over 5.25% decrease from the previous week. Several USDA reports dropped recently, giving us the monthly update on cattle, milk, and poultry. In short, cattle on feed down 1%, milk production up slightly, and poultry slaughter up 1%. Here's Bella Bingham with the details.
In this month's Cattle on Feed report, cattle and calves on feed down 1% from February last year. Placements in feedlots January this year 2% higher than last year, while marketings of fed cattle 1% higher than January last year. Other disappearance 26% lower than January last year. In the milk production report, January 2025 production up slightly from last year. Production per cow 8 pounds below last year, and number of milk cows on farms in 24 major milk producing states up 54,000 head. In the poultry slaughter report, certified wholesome poultry up 1% from January last year. Total live weight also up 1%. Young chickens inspected up 2% and mature chickens up 3%. Turkey inspections down 5% from last year, while ducks down 14%. Young chickens slaughtered up 1% from last year, along with turkeys, also up 1%. Dr. Josh Maples commented on the Cattle on Feed report, stating, February placements are likely to be impacted by the lingering impacts of the Mexico cattle import ban. A regional look at the data implies the impact of the Mexico import ban on January placements. January 2025 placements of cattle into feedlots in Texas were 50,000 head lower than a year ago, which is a 14.5% decrease. This was offset by a 60,000 head increase in Kansas and a 30,000 head increase in Nebraska during January. The largest increase in placements was in the 700 to 799 pound weight range, which were up 30,000 head from a year ago. Placements were up across all weight classes in Nebraska and Kansas and lower across all weight classes in Texas. Placements of cattle into Texas feedlots weighing less than 699 pounds were down 35,000 head during January compared to a year ago.
In our row report this week, we look at what's causing the constant price rises. Corn and wheat higher than this time last year, but soybeans and cotton lower. What's been causing this rally? Market analyst Dan Huber gives us his take.
The stagnation, I think we've enjoyed really a very nice rally in these markets for the last 7-8 weeks, really since the middle of December. And as all things, we've adjusted for some adjustments in lower production numbers in the corn, most specifically a little bit of kickback in demand. But here again, that's what the function of the market. We should adjust for those changes within the supply-demand picture, and then you need something new to make it go any further, and I think we've probably kind of exhausted that story at this point. Of course, in wheat, when it comes to winter kill, nobody really knows until we, of course, get into the spring and summer months. Where you've got a kind of a dichotomy going in the wheat right now is when you look domestically, there's certainly nothing bullish. When ending stocks continue to grow, I think we're going to be the highest we've been in probably the last 5 years, somewhere in that neck of the woods. But then if you look over at the global stocks continue to contract. So you've got kind of a push and pull situation there. So, if other problems do develop with some, let's say, winter kill in Russia, Ukraine, maybe even in some of the European nations, then you might be able to build on that story a little bit. But I think at this point in time, until we see something more concrete, it's going to be difficult to extend prices above and beyond where they've been already. There's actually a number of targets that were hit this week. When you look at some of the longer-term charts in December corn, on just the December weekly, we made some good retracements, tested some highs of a year ago. So as much as anything, there are areas to watch. There's nothing magic that says we have to stop at those zones. But that said, next week we're going to hear some acreage estimates. Granted, they're going to be statistical estimates that are going to be generated by a computer, but I think for all intents and purposes, most people feel we're going to see extra corn acreage out there next year. So unless you can back that up with a weather issue, higher acreage, ample supply, not a burdensome supply, but an ample supply of corn, then how do you really justify taking prices higher? Positive fundamental news is hard to come by. There's fundamental news out there. Export sales, we did bounce back a little bit here this last week, but sales have really drifted off. We know the South American harvest is going to just continue to pick up pace. They're going to take a larger and larger share of the current business that's happening. Yes, the report that came out last week, was that last week? Or, as far as the supply demand, it really, you could say it was a little bit positive. The beans, that the carryout was not as high as expected, but it's still growing each year. So it's just not as overwhelming as we once thought it was. So.
And that's it for a deeper look into the markets. The row crop rally continues. Time will tell when it decides to slow down. Mike?
Thanks, Zach. In 2024, according to USDA stats, the state of Mississippi grew 490,000 acres of corn. What if the vast majority of all that was lost to a virulent crop disease? Well, that's exactly what happened over the last 20 years in Florida. 429,000 acres lost to something called citrus greening, the most devastating enemy of citrus. But now it turns out there's real hope for a comeback. Here's Colleen Bradford-Krantz with Hope for Citrus Country.
Ron English had spent 35 years as production manager at his family's Florida citrus business when the state was hit by citrus greening, a disease that has ravaged Florida's iconic orange and grapefruit industry.
About 2015, we decided that greening had hurt us enough to where the quality of the fruit wasn't there, and when it hit us hard. It didn't gradually go out. All that we did to try to, what we knew to do to keep the trees alive didn't work. So we made a decision just to shut our operation down. My father-in-law and our family have been in since 1895.
Life-changing decisions like this one have become common across Florida since citrus greening, also referred to as HLB, emerged in 2005. Since that time, producers in the state have lost 63% of their citrus-bearing acres. While some owners of those 429,000 acres of former groves switched to other forms of agriculture or kept the land, others sold to developers.
We were able to sell something we didn't want to do, where we once have groves or subdivisions, strip centers, malls.
Citrus greening, caused by a bacteria spread by the tiny, non-native Asian citrus psyllid, destroys orange, grapefruit, tangerine, and other citrus trees. English recently saw a 1950s ad showing children drinking Florida orange juice. It reminded him how long Americans have associated Florida with oranges. Now the state's orange production has plummeted 90%, from nearly 150 million 90-pound boxes in 2005 to 15.8 million boxes in 2023, the lowest annual production since the 1930s. But English has found himself back in an orange grove feeling hopeful. He oversees a test grove for a company called Soil-Sia, which has licensed the rights to further develop and commercialize precision-bred citrus trees from the University of Florida. Plant biologist Nian Wong and university colleagues used CRISPR technology, a genome editing tool, to develop trees that can still survive and produce fruit despite exposure to the devastating bacteria. The trees contain no foreign DNA from other plants or animals. If successful, these genetically edited trees and rootstock could revive citrus production in Florida and save it elsewhere.
This problem is not only Florida problem, it's a worldwide problem. In all the major citrus production area in Asia, in Brazil, in the United States, we all have the same problem.
About 50 miles from Wong's Central Florida labs, Soil-Sia's Tampa area facility houses a dozen employees who are rapidly refining the most promising genetic edits. Early results have been positive, with the first priority on Valencia and Hamlin orange varieties and an edited rootstock for grafting.
What we're doing is finding the specific genes that are susceptible to HLB and using CRISPR precision breeding to turn off this interaction. And this occurs all the time in nature. And we have a tree that we're saying is showing early HLB resistance. We hope it's going to last for a lot longer, but we only have trees that have been in the field for a couple of years. Every 6 months, we retest them, right, to see if the bacteria is growing in the tree and what's going on. And every 6 months, we're getting more and more confident.
Lagos and his colleagues are also working on citrus greening-resistant grapefruit and mandarin oranges.
We have to screen lots and lots of plants and different combinations of different CRISPR edits to see what plant has the desired edit and which one has the desired traits of resistance that we're hoping for. We spend a lot of time. These plants take 6 months to a year to get to the stage where they're in soil. So we have to be very thorough in screening so that all the effort we're devoting for isn't a waste.
In the past decade, Floridians have tried one possible solution after another, from spraying to kill the insects to tenting the young trees to protect them. All either failed or required costly repeated treatments.
We do feel the pressure. They get it to growers quickly because, I mean, they're really struggling, right? It's a real testament to the growers that they've stayed in this industry, even with citrus greening.
And now they may be close.
How do you know they're disease resistant? Well, you got to put it into the field, right? You have to expose it to the psyllid. You have to expose it to the disease.
So far, researchers say the trees that result from precision breeding look much healthier than the control trees.
Different gene targets are showing tolerance where the plant actually still gets infected, but it's a big, beautiful tree compared to the controls. We're seeing others where the amount of bacteria in the plant is so low or almost undetectable compared to the controls.
All that work in University of Florida and Soil-Sia labs and greenhouses may finally bear fruit. Literally, they hope. But it takes almost half a decade before citrus trees produce significant amounts of fruit, after which traits such as taste and yield will need to be evaluated.
If everything goes well, I think we'd be looking at the end of 2026 or maybe spring of 2027 where we kind of get those first commercial trees out there. But they're going to still have to plant these trees in numbers, and it's going to take 4-5 years, even maybe a little longer, before it's at full production. So to really start bringing the industry back, it's going to take some time.
As for Ron English, he is once again optimistic that his grandchildren might someday have the opportunity to get the family back into the citrus business.
This what we're doing is the key to getting back. And once we can get people started and start planting, I think it'll catch on.
Hopefully that's exactly what will happen. Good story and good luck. Well, next week, at long last, this year's Dixie National Sale of Junior Champions.
It's a big story, and this year the numbers were bigger than ever. More than $500,000 raised in the sale. You'll also meet a hardworking young lady bound for greatness.
And to top it all off, say goodbye to auctioneer Jackie Corson, retiring after 30 years of helping youth raise millions of dollars. The 2025 Dixie National, next time on Farm Week.
Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. See you next week. Thanks for watching.